Welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. Here's your host, Scott Cowan.
All right. My guest today is Toby Hanson. I know Toby because we're both members of the Independent Order of Odd Fellows. And what little I know of him is that he's an accordion player. So why don't you fill us in on a little bit more, Toby?
Thank you very much, Scott. It's great to be here on your podcast today. And that's all true. I'm an accordion player. I play the accordion, and most people would say, well, what exactly does that mean? What kind of music do you play? And for me, being a full-time professional musician, except for the last year because of the pandemic, that means basically I play whatever pays the bills. So it's easier for me to kind of draw a line around stuff that I play and exclude other things, because there are things that I'm better at and things that I might be able to do, but not as well as others. So to give your listeners an idea, I play accordion. I also play piano. And my area of expertise is in music for social dancing. So I actually work with a variety of different bands. I have a polka band, which is not surprising for an accordionist, and that is the Smilin' Scandinavians. I also work with a couple of different country and western bands, the Jangles, which is a western swing band out of the North Sound area. I play with Cowgirl's Dream in Tacoma. Occasionally I sit in with Patty and the Travelin' Four out of the Maple Valley area. And then I'm also music director for a full-size ballroom dance orchestra called the Cafe Orchestra. So I do a lot of different things. They are mostly all connected to social dance music. So these days in the music business, there just aren't as many opportunities for good paying live gigs. Except for dance music. Dancers are still out there in enough numbers that they will support a band that is playing music for them. So that's where I tend to concentrate my time. I've also done a few things theatrically. I've produced recordings. I've done some other studio work and things like that. And I also do some media production on my own. As you mentioned, we're both members of the Independent Order of Odd Fellows. I produce a podcast for Odd Fellows called the Three Links Oddcast. And I also produce my very own internet radio show. It's called the Scandinavian Polka Party, and that airs on 247polkaheaven.com. So you can look that up, and you can hear me doing my DJ voice introducing polkas on the internet.
Okay, so I can't not pass up an opportunity to kind of make fun of a polka radio station. Wow. We're going to come back to that. I want to start off. We're going to come back to that. So my initial question to you is, how did you get started with the accordion?
Well, that's an interesting question, because the accordion is not an instrument that gets a lot of exposure in mainstream pop music. If all you know about music is what you see on TV or hear on the radio, or maybe watch one of the more popular YouTube channels or something like that, you jump on Spotify and pull up your playlist, I can almost guarantee that if you don't already know the accordion exists, you won't find out about it that way. However, the accordion actually has a long, interesting history in American music. And so if you go down underneath that surface layer of just what's popular right now, you find the accordion a lot of different places. You know, the biggest area where you're going to find it is ethnic music. So Mexican, Italian, French, German, Czech, Croatian, Russian, Swedish, basically any European tradition or any other tradition that's been influenced by European tradition, you will find the accordion. One time, I even had the good fortune to meet an accordionist from Uganda. She had grown up in East Africa and learned to play the accordion because there were some accordion players who happened to be there in Uganda. So if you have any kind of access to what I would call the less popular music of America, you can find the accordion all over the place. For me, I had personal exposure to it. My uncle, he plays the accordion, and he would always play for family events. So when we would have Thanksgiving or birthday parties, Christmas dinner, anything like that, Uncle George would pull out his accordion. He'd start playing. I was fascinated by it. Here's this big black and white box, and it's moving around. There are these buttons and keys, and it looks so amazing, and you get all these different sounds out of it. So I was fascinated by that. I was too young at the time to really pick up an accordion and start playing. So I started out on piano, and I took several years of piano lessons. That was my first instrument. When I was in junior high school, I got my first accordion, and I started playing around with it, figuring some things out. My uncle showed me a few things that he knows, and that got me started. Well, when I went away to college, I decided there are so many good pianists in the world. If I want to do something distinctive, I need to do it on accordion. So I got really serious. I took several years of accordion lessons. I studied with a great teacher in Puyallup, Gary Dahl. He taught me, how to really make the accordion into a serious, legitimate musical instrument. So one thing that is unfortunate about the accordion is, since there's not a lot of access to good accordion information or education, people will pick it up, figure it out, not get things quite right, and then they will play poorly and propagate that image of this bad instrument that nobody likes. When you hear it played well, it's great and it sounds wonderful, but not enough people get exposed to the really good accordion music because accordion is almost never used in anything that's really popular. So for me, it was kind of a personal connection through my family. I've heard all kinds of different answers about people who, everything from they found it in a junk shop for $50 and figured they'd start playing it, to they heard Zydeco music one time and decided they wanted to pick it up. There are a lot of different paths to the accordion, but they are never straightforward.
Well, it's certainly not an instrument that was offered in school band when I was a kid. So two questions about the accordion that I'm curious about. Number one is, about when did accordions appear in music? When, and then second of all, since you say there's bad accordion music, can you describe what the accordion is as an instrument, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So to answer your first question, the accordion, we know its exact age and date of birth because it was patented in Vienna in 1829. So in another 8 years, we're going to be celebrating the bicentennial of the accordion. And at the time, early 19th century Europe, there was a lot of experimentation going on in all fields of science. Some of your listeners who might be familiar with electrical engineering might know the name Charles Wheatstone from the Wheatstone Bridge. So he also invented the concertina, that sort of small little hexagonal or octagonal squeeze box, the little tiny one. And he did that by taking metal reeds, putting them on metal plates, and then finding a way to force air across those reeds to create a sound. You make the reed vibrate, you get a sound. It's the same way that a harmonica makes sound, only instead of blowing through the harmonica with your mouth, the harmonica is inside of a box, and it has valves and bellows. You expand the bellows, you open the valve, that pulls air across the reed, and so you get the accordion. So concertina came first. Accordion was patented 1829, Vienna, by Cyril Damian. Then a pilgrim on a religious journey took an accordion with him to Italy. There was a young person, he was, 15, 16 years old, in Italy, near the shrine that this pilgrim was going to. His name was Paolo Soprani. he was fascinated by the accordion. And while this pilgrim was staying on his family's farm traveling, he took the accordion apart, figured out how it worked, put it back together again. Then he started making accordions. And this was the genesis of the Italian accordion industry. So it sort of all grew up because of Paolo Soprani and his fascination with the accordion in the mid-19th century. So today, a large portion of the accordions that are made now and played throughout the world are made in one particular town in Italy, Castelfidardo. There's still a few making accordions in Germany. There's some making in the Czech Republic, some in Russia. A lot of accordion production happens in China now because following the Cultural Revolution in China, the communist authorities decided the piano was decadent and Western and too expensive for the masses. So they promoted the accordion as a good musical alternative to that.
Oh.
So
okay.
It made the accordion very, very popular in China. So to answer your second question, which is what exactly is the accordion? How does it work? A musicologist would say it's a free reed aerophone. Free reed meaning the reed doesn't vibrate against anything. If you think of a clarinet, the reed hits against the mouthpiece when it's vibrating. Well, an accordion or a harmonica, a harmonium, those are all free reeds, so the reed doesn't hit against anything when it's vibrating. It vibrates in an aperture. And so this means that the accordion is much more like an organ than it is like a piano, because an organ has a sound that sustains for as long as you hold the key. That's true of the accordion. The piano is a very forgiving instrument in that if you hit a wrong note, it goes away quickly. But on the accordion, wrong notes are much less forgiving because the wrong note sounds as long as the key is down. So it is a much less forgiving instrument for those who don't yet have a lot of skill playing it.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I could go, we could continue down the technical rabbit hole, but we'll do that another time.
That's probably about as much technical interest as your listeners have in the accordion.
Well, where I was going to go, and I'll just say is, many years ago, I used to work for Tacoma Goodwill as the director of online sales, and we would sell antiques and collectibles at auction, and we would get a lot of accordions.
Oh yeah,
a lot of, and they were always different sizes. There was just different fit and finish, if you will, things like that, and without a doubt, they would sell. We'd get a lot of buyers and people were buying these things, and we were just kind of scratching our heads going, why were they buying these things? They almost always smelled really bad. Like they'd been,
yes.
And like, how do you clean this up? Anyway, I digress. So you had a family member, you got introduced to the accordion, you went to college, you made the tactical decision that the competition in the piano space was more competitive than in the accordion space. You took lessons. You still play piano. I know that.
Yeah.
You started a polka band like in 1995.
1995. That is correct.
And you guys are still, you were still playing.
We were still playing. We had a lot of gigs booked last year that got canceled.
So where does a polka band, you were saying it's for social dancing, but where were you guys playing? Were you just in Washington State? Were you going out of the state?
Well,
what was going on?
We used to travel quite a bit. Before I had a wife and a family and a lot of things to keep me rooted more locally, we used to travel a lot. Usually a couple trips around the Northwest in the summer, as far east as Montana, we would play big festivals there, and as far south as Medford, Oregon. We've also done a couple of special trips through the years. We've gone back and played at some polka festivals back in the Midwest. So we did the Iron World Polka Fest, I think 3 times in Minnesota. Played the Medina Ballroom outside of the Twin Cities. in general, the local gigs here, we used to have a couple of dance clubs that specialized in polka music. The last one of those actually shut down in June of 2019. And they were largely made up of Midwestern expatriates who missed the experience they had back in Minnesota or Wisconsin, where Sunday afternoon after church, you go out to the VFW or the American Legion and there's a polka band playing and you dance for a couple hours. So they missed that. They formed these clubs here in Washington State. And we used to have quite a few of them. You know, there was one in Wenatchee, there was one in Spokane, one in Yakima. There were 4 of them at one time all around the Seattle area. So we would play for those club dances a couple of times a year. There's a few other polka bands in the area. And we would play the Filipino American Hall in Algona, the VFW in Renton, the old American Legion that used to be in Bothell, places like that. So with that whole demographic of dancers having aged considerably, they're all mostly in their 70s and 80s now. All of those dances are gone. So locally, we either play for private events. For example, assuming the pandemic lets up by July, we're booked to play a wedding out in Sequim because the groom's family is Polish and they're from the Midwest. So they want a polka band. So we do that. Then the other thing that we do a lot of is county fairs and festivals. So I think I've played at least half of the county fairs in Washington State and a few down in Oregon. You know, get up early, you drive down to Corvallis, you play the county fair there, and then you pack up and drive home late at night. So I've done a lot of that kind of stuff as well. And then every now and then we get the opportunity to go out and do something really nice. We've played at the Festival of Nations, Red Lodge, Montana. We used to do the Kimberley International Old Time Accordion Celebration in Kimberley, British Columbia. We've done a few other festivals, like I said, the Polka Fest at Iron World. We've done the Scandinavian Festival in Astoria, Oregon. You know, we travel around to these festivals. We were booked to play the Sons of Norway in Billings, Montana for their 50th anniversary last spring. That had to get canceled, of course.
Right. So when I think of the accordion, 2 things come to mind.
Okay.
One is kind of that oompa polka thing. And the other is Lawrence Welk.
Oh, yes.
Which, like before we hit record, I was telling you I used to watch the Lawrence Welk show with my grandmother. It was her. I mean, it was the Saturday night. I mean, it's what you did.
Well, yeah.
And you were mentioning that you watched it with family too. So, I mean, I think for those of us of a certain age, that's maybe that's the connector that we have is like, if you ever watched Lawrence Welk, there was the accordion. But you were in a country band too. How does the accordion fit into country and Western music? Because I'm drawing a blank there.
Well, that's another area where, for the most part, you'd go, what's he doing in the band? Are you sure he's really in the band? Yes, I'm really sure. I have the hat and boots to prove it. So if you look at country music prior to when it got super popular, starting in the 1950s, accordion was actually a really popular instrument for country music because you couldn't always count on having a piano wherever you were playing. But, you know, prior to the age of electric keyboards, the accordion was the next best thing. It was portable. It was the same instrument no matter where you go. So you're always playing your own instrument as opposed to playing whatever piano is sitting on stage at the time. So if you go back before the 1950s, accordion was a really popular part of country music. There were band leaders like Pee Wee King, who wrote the Tennessee Waltz. He played accordion. He also organized the Musicians Union in Nashville. He started, there's a little disagreement over who first brought drums to the Grand Ole Opry, whether it was Bob Wills or Pee Wee King. Suffice to say, they both did. We're not entirely sure who was first, though. Okay. But that was popular. The accordion was a very popular instrument at that time. what happened in the 1950s is you got sort of a smoothed over, some people would call it countrypolitan, some people call it the Nashville sound.
I've never heard countrypolitan. Sorry, I like that. I like that.
All of a sudden, the sort of Patsy Montana and Kitty Wells, Carter family kind of rustic, old-fashioned, back in the woods kind of sound got replaced with this smooth, polished, really highly produced sound. Instead of a fiddle player, you had a whole string section, and you had these very orchestral sounding arrangements. And that's when Patsy Cline got popular. So when you went to this smoother, almost big orchestral sound, the accordion got left behind in country music because it was seen as one of those rustic old hillbilly instruments with the fiddle and the banjo. Country music has gone through many different iterations with that kind of more rough-hewn sound coming back and being popular and then, taking a back seat again. The accordion never rebounded with country music. So even though there were people like Jimmy Dean, these days he's known more for his sausage, but he was a great country music star. He played the accordion. And of course, Pee Wee King, almost nobody remembers him nowadays, but he played the accordion. The one person that most people would know nowadays and have probably heard his playing without knowing his name is my friend Joey Miskulin, who worked as a session player in Nashville for many years. He works with Riders in the Sky. So if you see Riders in the Sky, you see the accordion player with them. That's my buddy Joey. He played on a lot of the popular records out of Nashville, like about 1990 through 2015 or so. His biggest selling one was that big hit record that Shania Twain had. I don't remember the name of it, but he played on that. So the accordion on Shania Twain, that's all my friend Joey Miskulin. So it's there. It's almost unknown as like a main featured instrument in country music, but if you go back and look at the roots, it was there. In fact, here's a trivia question that you can amaze your friends with. So when Bill Monroe first started out with his band, before they were the Bluegrass Boys, when he was just running an old-timey band, he had an accordion player in the band named Sally Forrester. And she was in the band mostly because her husband played fiddle. He was also in the band. So she was playing with Bill Monroe. Well, her husband left the band, so she decided to leave the band too. Bill Monroe replaced them with the duo of Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs. And in that moment, bluegrass was born.
Yeah, and has exploded in popularity and awareness across multiple genres of music. Bluegrass is seemingly everywhere nowadays in a lot of things. Okay.
Yeah.
So we always like to talk to you guys about Washington State and all that. So you're a native Washingtonian. Two-part question. What is the venue that you've played at in any of your bands? It doesn't matter which band that you think is the most desirable to play at as a musician. And then the flip side to that is, if you were to go see a performer perform, where would you want to see them perform at?
That is a really great question, because I've had the opportunity to do some wonderful shows all over the state. Everything from the Okanagan County Fair to the Fin Fest that's held at Nacelle High School. So I've got to play a lot of really wonderful venues. I would have to say probably the best combination of everything is the Elks Lodge in Port Angeles. It is a beautiful old building. It's just gorgeous. I think it was built sometime in the 1920s. And they have a beautiful ballroom. I think it's on the second floor. They've got balconies on the third floor overlooking the ballroom. The stage is gorgeous. And unlike a lot of places that were, more so built for looks and not necessarily functionality, that venue has a really good combination of just easy access for performers. It's easy to walk in, set up, get things ready. Good technical crew. I was there most recently for part of the Wanda Fuca Festival, which is a wonderful festival they have out in Port Angeles. And it sounds good. They have good people there. It's really easy to do. And it has the kind of setup where from the stage, I am just far enough away from the crowd that I can really watch the room easily and see how the performance is going over. But at the same time, people are close enough that I can interact when I need to. And that's an important thing, because I'll tell you a little side story about what happens when you are too close to the audience. A few years ago, the city of Enumclaw decided they wanted to put on an Oktoberfest. And so, of course, having a polka band, I said, sure, I'll come out and play. So they set up a very low stage, about a foot high, in one end of one of their big multi-purpose buildings. And that was not so bad in and of itself. But at an Oktoberfest, there's a tendency for people to drink maybe a little too much beer. And so, being Enumclaw with a heritage of growing cucumbers and making pickles, they had a pickle wench who was a woman in a very suggestive costume. And she sold these gigantic dill pickles for $1. So she's going around with her basket full of pickles and tongs selling these pickles for $1. So I was in the middle of performing on stage, singing a song with a microphone in front of me. And these two guys who had really had probably more beer than they needed for the day came up to me with this pickle they'd already taken a couple bites out of and offered it to me and kept trying to jam it into my mouth while I was singing. And first of all, I do not like pickles. I'm one of those people who believes that pickles are cucumbers soaked in evil. And number two, even if I liked pickles, I don't want your pickle after you've taken a couple bites out of it. Number three, I especially don't want to eat pickles while singing. So that is what happens when there is not enough separation from the audience. Now, as far as a venue where I like to go and see other performers, there are a couple that are very high on my list. First of all, in Yakima, they have a beautiful park along the river, and they have this green belt with a little pond and a concrete stage in the middle of the pond. I've performed on that stage, and I've also seen other performers there. It is absolutely beautiful. You cannot imagine a better outdoor setting for a performance. You know, sure, everybody loves the Gorge, but as far as a small local show where you can really get the performance experience up close, Sarge Hubbard Park there in Yakima with the stage in the middle of the pond, because in the afternoon, the sun starts sinking low in the west, getting close to the mountains. You get this beautiful sunset and this wonderful stage, and you're out there, and it's just beautiful. As far as an indoor venue, my favorite indoor venue has to be the Century Ballroom in Seattle. And partially that's for sentimental reasons, because Century Ballroom is in the old Grand Lodge building for the Oddfellows on Capitol Hill in Seattle. So it's this beautiful, 1908 Italian Revival building on Capitol Hill. It's absolutely gorgeous in there. The stage is beautiful. It's got this golden arch with proscenium lights and this gigantic chandelier in the middle. It's just a stunning location. And also, I happen to know the owner there, and she is just the most wonderful person, really great venue host for performers. And so I always love going to the Century, especially when I can get a table up in the balcony so you can take in the whole experience with the show and the people and the setting. It's just incredible.
Okay. I've not ever heard of the Yakima venue, so that's amazing. And the Century Ballroom is amazing too. So So this is a hard question to ask you. What we always, I run through these questions with people, but I mean, this is a great question for me. Like when we're talking to like a business owner or, someone who's a creative that's creating a product. And I know your music is art and is a product, but I hate to call music a product. It just seems weird. Did you ever think you had a great idea? I don't know what type of band or a song or just something, and it didn't go well, but you thought it was going to be brilliant.
Well, I mean, in some ways you could say that's my entire career. Because I thought when I was in college, I thought that the coolest thing in the world was going to be starting a polka band and that everybody would just instantly love it. Because when people actually hear good polka music, they love it. They're like, wow, this is good. It's well played. It's very musical. It's lively and upbeat. And I feel happy just listening to it. But the thing about that is you can only get that kind of exposure if you really go looking for it. It's almost impossible to just sort of casually stumble across polka music somewhere being played. I mean, unless you're in an area where it is more common, the Midwest. But even then, it is so far outside the idea of what is popular that people don't even know what to make of it. That's why when I introduce myself to people who don't have any background, I would say that I play accordion and piano, because if I say I play accordion, then their usual reaction is just, what? You play, what does that even mean to play accordion? So, well, I play music on an accordion. But it's so hard for people to sort of relate to that. They just don't know. They're like, what do I say? How do I talk to this person? It doesn't make sense. So I have looked at this, for 25 years now. I've had the polka band and we play, and we've become one of the most popular first call bands. When it comes to big events like Oktoberfests and things, the Leavenworth Oktoberfest, we play that every year. We do the Oktoberfest at Joint Base Lewis McChord. We've done the one they used to hold in Monroe. We've done the one in Puyallup. We've done the one down in Vancouver. We've played at all the different brew pubs and places that have private Oktoberfests. But that is a niche that works for 6 weeks out of the year.
I was just going to say, September and October, you're turning away gigs, and then you're starving the rest of the year.
Exactly. I triple my prices in the fall. September and October, I can basically name what I want to get paid, and the big events will pay it. In fact, to pull back the curtain a little bit to what the business side of music is like, frequently I have to bid on gigs because event planners, they will put out a call and say, hey, we're looking for anybody who can do this event at this time. Send us a bid. So I'll put in a bid. One time for a big event that was somewhere up in the North Sound area. I don't remember exactly where. For the whole weekend of performances for my 5-piece band, I bid $2,500. The guy called me back right away. He said, oh, if you're available, I'll send you a contract right now. I thought, great, that's fantastic. I'm so glad. And then comes the kicker. He tells me, I'm used to working with pop acts, and I thought you were going to be at least twice as expensive as what you bid.
And you're like, well, wait, I can be.
Yeah,
just give me a chance.
Yeah, just add another zero to that. That's fine. Go ahead.
That's fine.
It's fine. Go ahead. I'm okay with that. Do it. So it's kind of that idea that when it's in demand for that little slice of the year, I wish I could clone myself. Man, if I could clone myself, I could play 9 gigs a week, September and October. But it is hard to do that when you have a 5-piece band. Some of the guys are still working day jobs. Others have family obligations and things like that. So it's challenging to make something like that really functional the rest of the year. But that's why we also do things like work on recordings. in fact, in 2016, we released our most recent recording called 20 Years, and that was in honor of our 20th anniversary in 2015. That album was nominated for Album of the Year by the Cleveland Style Polka Hall of Fame back in Cleveland, Ohio. So in 2017, I got to go to Cleveland and participate in the award show. Now, I did not win the award, unfortunately. It's hard to beat the hometown favorites, because after all, it is the Cleveland Style Polka Awards. So I'm competing with all the guys that everybody back in Cleveland knows and listens to regularly. But, you know, we do those other kinds of things. We have videos on YouTube. You can get our music on iTunes, Amazon, Google, Spotify, all those sorts of places.
So I'm going to ask you, because I'm scrolling through your official links page here.
Yes.
And you said the two words combined. So I have to ask, and because I talked to you before this, there's Cleveland style polka music.
Yeah.
How would you define Cleveland style? And then can you contrast it to what other polka style is there?
Well, all of the different polka styles have their roots in an ethnic community. One of the interesting things about polka music as a group is it was popular in Europe from about 1850 to 1920 or so. And it was music really of the peasants, the farmers, the blue collar workers, you know, kind of the people who emigrated here to North America. They brought that music with them. So what we would now think of as polka bands, you know, accordion, clarinet, banjo, tuba, drums, something like that. Those were all rooted in ethnic ensembles. So you'd have the Polish band that would play at the Polish Catholic Church for the Polish wedding receptions. And then down the street in the next neighborhood over, you'd have the German band that plays for the German events at the German Lutheran Church. And so each ethnic group had its own musical tradition. When you get to America, the second generation, the American-born generation is here. They grow up with that music, but there's starting to be more cultural mixing between these different ethnic groups. So instead of the Italians just staying in the Italian community, they're starting to interact with other communities. Well, that's what kind of gave rise to what we think of as American polka music. It's this mix of different ethnic groups. So each one of these ethnic groups inspired a style of polka music with its own characteristics. So basically the four big groups that you think of for polka music are the Polish, the Germans, the Czechs, and the Slovenians. The Polish, they have wonderful traditions, singing in the Polish language. You know, stars like Eddie Blazonczyk, Frank Wojnarowski, Jean Wisniewski, Walt Solek, Marian Lush. You know, a whole bunch of guys with Polish names playing Polish music for Polish polka fans. That music tends to be a little bit slower and more laid back, kind of loose phrasing. Then you get the Germans, and that tends to be faster, very much brass band style. If you ever go to Leavenworth and you hear the town band playing, that is exactly the German style. That's okay. They recreate it beautifully in Leavenworth. So that's the Germans. The Czechs, somewhat similar to the German style. Anywhere that the Czechs settled, you get the Czech music. So the Great Plains, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, all the way down into Texas. And then the other group is the Slovenians. And the Slovenians gave us America's polka king, Frankie Yankovic. He was the first big star of polka music coming out of the late 1940s, just after World War II. He had the hits Just Because, the Blue Skirt Waltz. He was actually signed to Columbia Records, if you can imagine that. For those old enough to remember large record companies that used to promote and distribute records, he had a contract with Columbia Records for 20 years. anything the man released sold and made money for Columbia because there were enough fans of polka music. And so the Slovenian community was all centered around Cleveland, Ohio. That was the area where most Slovenes emigrated to in this country. So the Slovenian style of music, it kind of Americanized and became the Cleveland style. So if you listen to Frankie Yankovic, that's what you're going to hear. That's Cleveland style. It's either two accordions, banjo, bass, and drums, or it's accordion, clarinet, banjo, bass, and drums. It's very much rhythmically driven by the banjo, accordions playing lead, clarinet doing kind of Dixieland style fills. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we have a large Scandinavian population, which, of course, when I picked a name for my band with the last name Hanson, that is as Swedish a name as you can possibly get. So I had to pick a name that somehow incorporated that heritage, because if I had chosen the Jolly Germans with the last name Hanson, people would have gone, wait a minute, you're not German. Hanson isn't a German name. That's Swedish. So, I kind of had to incorporate that when I picked the name for the band, because otherwise it is a little bit tough if you're in an area that has these distinct polka styles. Like if you go around Chicago and you want to hear polka music, it's almost 100% Polish. You're going to hear Polish style bands. And if you go to Cleveland, it's going to be almost 100% Slovenian. You go to Buffalo, that's a very Polish town, so you're going to hear Polish. Now, if you're in Omaha, Nebraska, you're going to hear Czech music. And that's just the way that those areas are, because the communities are there and that's the music they want to hear.
So your band, what do you cross over and play the various styles? Where are you guys at with stylistically? Well,
given that there's not a large community of people who want just one style of music, we have to be able to cover a little bit of everything. Okay. So we do lots of Scandinavian because, of course, that's my background. So I grew up hearing that music. And we also do probably, I would say, a big chunk of German and a big chunk of Slovenian, a little bit of Czech, and just a teeny bit of Polish, because we don't have much of a Polish community here in the Northwest. So I can sing part of one song in Polish, and I can do one song in Slovenian. The rest, when I'm doing a foreign language tune, it's either going to be Swedish or German or Norwegian, and basically the Scandinavian music and the German, because that's where we tend to get most of our work and most of the interest from.
Okay. So I want to put you on the spot. I don't know that you can accomplish this for me, or I don't know that this is where we're going to go off the rails.
Okay.
I don't, not scripted. So here we go. So be prepared for a no, folks. Do you have your accordion or a accordion nearby? And would you break it out?
Well, sure. Yeah, I've got it right.
We've never tried to record music on the music episode, so this could be entertaining. If you're willing, I'd love for you to put something together.
All right. Well, I will grab it right now.
Okay. So while he's doing that, I'm just going to ramble, and this totally was not scripted. So we're going to pause. And he's back. So, Toby, what I would like, if you can, you don't have your headphones on, you can't hear me. So, Toby, what I would like is, can you, and this is going to be awkward because it's going to be a verbal description of a visual thing. Can you kind of explain, and I'll put a picture of an accordion on the show notes page, but can you describe the key components of the accordion?
I can do that for you. We'll start in the middle. That's where the bellows are. That's the part that is folded. So if you have an accordion door in your house, one that folds up, it's named an accordion door because it has folds like the bellows. That's the part that does the breathing. The accordion is a reed instrument. It's actually, using air to make a reed vibrate. So you need to move air through the instrument. The bellows do that by expanding and contracting. On the left side of the bellows, that's where all the little buttons are. And a full-size accordion like the one I have here has 120 buttons on it. There are different kinds of chords, major, minor, dominant seventh, and diminished seventh. And then you get a couple rows of bass notes, so you can put those together in various combinations. Over on the right side of the instrument, that's where the piano keys are. Now, some accordions have buttons over on the right side as well, but most of the accordions you see here in North America, they're going to be piano accordions. The piano keys were put onto the accordion to make it easy for pianists to switch over and play accordion.
So how many keys are on that side?
41.
Okay.
So it's just a little over 3 octaves.
Okay. So then to make sound, you have to keep the bellows working, correct? Because like if you were to push on a key right now and the accordion is closed, if you will, there's no sound.
No sound. Nothing. I'm pressing the key right now and there's no sound. It does not matter how hard you press the keys, because the keys themselves, they just open valves to let air through the reeds.
Okay.
So it's not like a guitar or piano where you can interact with it on a mechanical basis and suddenly get sound out of it. You have to have the bellows moving. There has to be air going through the reeds.
So depending on how much air you're putting through the bellows, then is how much sound correspondingly comes out?
That's correct.
Okay.
And in fact, the way I teach this to my students is the faster you move the bellows, the more air you move and the more sound you get. So we refer to bellows velocity instead of, say, pressure or something else like that.
Okay. And then one last question before I turn you loose on this thing. So I was looking on your Facebook page and it looks like you just picked up a new accordion.
I did.
And is that the one that you have right there by chance?
It is this very instrument.
Okay. So I thought I read something about it having, is there a microphone in that thing? I might have completely misconstrued that, but
no, you are correct. It's difficult to use external microphones on an accordion. And the reason for that is the instrument is moving around while it's playing. Now, a guitar stays basically in one place. So you put a microphone in front of a guitar, and except for a few small movements by the player, the microphone stays where it needs to because the guitar stays. The accordion is moving around. So it's a challenge to put a microphone on an accordion when it's moving around. The solution that's been used for about the last 50, 60 years has been to put microphones inside the accordion. And I got to give a shout out to my friends at Potosa Accordions up in Linwood, because I just got this instrument back from them. They did a little bit of tuning on it, and then they installed these beautiful new condenser microphones inside the instrument so that I can play it and just plug a cord into it like with a guitar. So that way I don't have to worry about, if I'm moving around while I'm playing and not being in front of the microphone.
Okay. So they do mic then the inside in the bellows area. Is that where the mic that would be where I would think the microphone would be? Originally,
microphones were suspended in the bellows in the middle. Nowadays, what they do, since we have smaller microphones, these things are just tiny, like maybe 1/4 of an inch long for the microphone capsules. They actually put them on a strip under the grill on the right side, and then they put a couple of microphones next to the bass mechanism on the left side. So that way you can get true stereo isolation of the two sides. And I actually have a stereo output on this so that I can adjust each channel individually.
So this thing's playing it's being amplified in stereo.
It's being amplified in stereo.
Okay. So, all right. So please play something.
All right. Since this accordion came to me from Cleveland, I'm going to do one of the old Yankovic classics, Just Because. Just because you think you're so pretty, just because you think you're so hot, just because you think you've got something that nobody else has got. You cause me to spend all my money. You laugh and call me old Santa Claus. Well, I'm telling you, baby, I'm through with you because, just because.
That's very cool to watch up close. That's, not something you see every day.
Well, thank you.
So you said this was a full-size accordion?
Full size.
That implies that there are other sizes. Am I correct in that?
That is correct. Because not everybody has the same size and shape of body, not everybody's going to play the same size of instrument. That's one nice thing about the accordion is you can get an instrument that fits exactly what you need.
Okay. All right. So we'll wrap this up. Why don't you tell our audience where they can hear more or find more out about you and your band and accordion in general? And we'll let you do that.
Well, coming up, the last Saturday in February, what's the date of that? 27th, I think.
I believe that to be true.
February 27th, there is an event called Day of the Accordion. Now, in pre-pandemic times, that used to take place live on stage at the Crossroads Shopping Center in Bellevue. However, this year, because of the pandemic, the Northwest Accordion Society is going online. We are doing a virtual version of Day of the Accordion. So we've got a playlist that we are putting together on YouTube with all of our region's finest accordionists. So I'm on there a couple of times. We have some other fantastic, really talented, great players from this area. They're all going to be featured there. It's NWASnews.org. That's Northwest Accordion Society. So NWASnews.org. You can go there and get all the information for Day of the Accordion. That's going to be released on YouTube on Saturday, February 27th. So you want to find out more about the accordion, that's a great place to do it. If you are interested in the accordion, you can certainly go to that same website. That's the website for the Northwest Accordion Society. We have a lot of great opportunities coming up in June, assuming that the pandemic lets up a little. We have our Leavenworth International Accordion Celebration in Leavenworth, Washington, and that's always Father's Day weekend. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we fill the town with accordionists, accordion music. We have workshops. We have concerts with great accordionists. We don't think we are going to be able to do the big version of that this year. We had to cancel it completely last year, but that's a good opportunity. And then in the end of August, there's the Rose City Accordion Camp that happens outside of Portland. I'm going to be an instructor there this year, so I will be teaching. It's open to accordionists of varying skill levels. So, as long as you know how to put on the accordion, we can teach you something there. So that's good. That's all the accordion kind of stuff. You can also find me if you want to look up the polka band. That is Smilin' Scandinavians. Now, there's no G on smiling. It's not smiling. It's Smilin', Smilin. I did that so that people would remember the name, because you have to remember that there's no G. So at SmilinScandinavians.com, you can find out about all of our recordings there. Another good place, if you want to hear our music, Our albums are available on Spotify, iTunes, Music Store, Google, Amazon, all the usual online places that you can get music. You can look up the Smilin' Scandinavians and you can find me there. And then as far as if you want to hear me as a DJ on the radio, just go to 247polkaheaven.com. That's the numbers 247. polkaheaven.com, and it's a 24-hour streaming polka radio station centered in Cleveland, Ohio. They broadcast, they actually have a terrestrial radio station there in Cleveland that carries some of the programming, and it streams on the internet for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We have a lot of different variety of polka programs. There are guys who do Polish shows, German, Czech, Slovak, Slovenian, Croatian. I do a Scandinavian show on there. And you can get all the information for the network at 247polkaheaven.com.
All right. Well, thank you very much. This was very informative and actually a lot of fun for me. I really appreciate you taking the time on your day. And yeah, thank you.
Hey, thank you, Scott. It's been fantastic. I'm always happy to come on and talk about my life as a musician, and especially here in the beautiful state of Washington, because not only am I a native, my family homesteaded here in the 1880s. So my roots go back almost 150 years right here in Pierce County. So I'm always happy to come on and talk about Washington State and pretty much anything else.
All right. Well, thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
Join us next time for another episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast.